All right, today we're going to be looking at the alternate future of the United States. This is the Republican timeline. So, in November, in this timeline, Trump wins the election. And the day after Trump's inauguration, all of these states in blue secede. And while blue America set their capital to Oakland or something, red America declares war. So, I can actually see both sides having a disadvantage here. On the one hand, Blue America being split into basically three different groups means they're less unified. But on the other hand, Red America's gonna have to fight multiple fronts. And the blue side's goal is just to unite all these fronts into one. So Wisconsin and Indiana are gonna work their way over to Chicago, and they successfully encircle the city. But Indiana's working with Minnesota and Michigan to cut off Wisconsin. And just like that, Wisconsin is now isolated from the rest of the United States. So Wisconsin pulls back, but Illinois manages to encircle Indiana's troops, and they are all captured. Wisconsin, however, lucks out and does not immediately get encircled within blue territory. But now Michigan can just swoop in like this. Now Illinois and Michigan make spearhead to cut off Wisconsin's coast. And And after a few days of fighting, the Wisconsin surrenders. Oops. So now Michigan and Illinois can move to Indiana. But then Ohio makes moves in Michigan. Meanwhile, West Virginia moves to invade Maryland. Kentucky and Tennessee make a joint invasion into Western Virginia, not to be confused with West Virginia, while North Carolina moves in from the south. So let's say DC is around here. Anyway, West Virginia West Virginia moves to encircle DC, which I'm saying is here for convenience. Yeah, while New York troops flood into Pennsylvania. So I'm doing this in MS Paint. It's not the prettiest. Meanwhile, Nevada sends a spearhead toward Colorado through Utah, which connects. And Colorado and Arizona move in to take the rest. And New Mexico. Meanwhile, Idaho sends a spearhead to Northern California, which goes well until California cuts them off, encircling Idahoan troops. But Idaho does not care. Did not mean to do that. Idaho does not care. Now they're getting dangerously close to Oakland. And the spearhead has been cut off completely from Idaho. But then Hawaii decides, nope, we are not doing this anymore. And just declare independence. The other 49 states meet and draw up a plan to become independent countries as a last resort. Yeah, pretty of that. Michigan is now ready to take out Ohio. So they retake Toledo and encircle thousands of Ohioan troops, who are all captured. What was I? Oh yeah, Indiana's not looking too good as a massive coup just so happens to start up here, not funded by either side. Speaking of funding, Russia supports the red side and NATO supports the blue side. The Hoosier rebels meet up with the Ohioan border and cross over into Kentucky. But the colonel's got plans. They cut off some rebel forces and immediately kill them all. But that drop in morale is temporary as the rebellion meets up with the main Midwest Blue Front. Free of this. After weeks of fighting, the northern half of Indiana finally falls to blue forces as Illinois and Michigan prepare an encirclement of what's left, which is successful. Kentucky makes a spearhead. Ohio makes a spearhead. They encircle some blue forces. But then the main Midwest Blue Army swarms in, frees up those troops, and the Hoosiers are done. Meanwhile, this is what that Idahoan front looks like. While Utah loses more and more ground every day. The Mormons are not doing too hot. I don't know the demographics of Utah, so I'm just gonna make something up and say where it's Salt Lake City. I'm looking up right now. Salt Lake City. Okay, I was wrong. So some Oregon troops finally arrive and make a spearhead toward Salt Lake City, which is ultimately stopped for about a day. Eventually, eventually the city is captured, forcing the Utahns to surrender. Meanwhile, Idaho's in even more trouble, but their Oakland forces have been holding out for weeks. And back down to New Mexico and Texas and Oklahoma form an unlikely duo and start their invasion of New Mexico. Big bad Texas had been doing a lot of planning. They finally got their second civil war. They want to plan it perfectly. Oh, this is much cleaner. See, I'm getting the hang of this. Yeah, New Mexico ain't doing too hot. And now Iowa has launched a spearhead to Chicago. But then Minnesota and Michigan forces in Wisconsin cut Iowa off from this eastern part of the country. And after a few weeks, the Iowan encirclement ends in bloodbath. And now the Midwest is advancing their front, while Colorado proceeds to launch their own spearhead across Kansas, across Missouri, but Missouri stops it, pushes them back. But that was a big mistake on Missouri's part because it leaves not just them, but Iowa vulnerable. Nebraska cannot hold off all three of these states. So Iowa surrenders. Missouri gets beaten down and is forced to retreat from the Kansas front. So Colorado resumes their spearhead. And eventually, Midwest forces invade into Kansas, meet up with Colorado, which splits Red America in half. And Missouri truly lives up to its name. The Midwest proceed to take a lot of Missouri's land. So, until after months, Missouri surrenders. Let's check in on Pennsylvania. Not good. Now Ohio's getting invaded from the east. Pennsylvania has surrendered, actually. Things are not good for Donald Trump. And now the New Yorkers, the Strip, cancel out the encirclement of DC. By July 3rd, both sides are in danger of losing their capital. As let's say Oakland is right here. So, Red America launches the first nuke into Sacramento. In retaliation, Blue America nukes DC. Both countries' governments collapse. So now let's look at the peace treaty signed on July 4th. So all of these states and the territories who will be discussed later, like later on in the series, has gained independence. Now, this is a good thing for states like California, not so good for Mississippi over here. So we have NATO, Canada's still in, but California, Oregon, Washington State join. Alaska surprisingly joins. But if you think about it, is it really that surprising? Russia's right there. New York joins. Oops. And that is all we're going to see from alliances for now. Now let's look at the Democrat timeline. So, just before I started this part, I found out that Biden dropped out of the race. So, I'm just going to go under the assumption that Kamala Harris won in the Democratic timeline. So, on January 6th, we have a repeat of, well, January 6th. 4 years apart. Have them start their insurrection down here. And they very swiftly take this part of the capital. I'm gonna need some way. Uh, oh yeah, the brush was better. Eventually, after a couple hours, let's just say this is what the map looks like. But they go ahead and capture that last little bit. President Biden's dead. President elect Harris is dead. A bunch of people in Congress are dead. It looks like the insurrectionists have won. But an anonymous hacker hacked the nuclear launch code, pressed the button, and hits DC. I'm just going to say it's there for convenience. Everyone in the city is dead. Former President Trump was there. He's dead. Both sides of this conflict have been wiped out. Oops. Anyway, the government has collapsed in both timelines. And by the 4th of July, all 50 states and all the territories have become independent. And from here on out, pretty much everything is the same in both timelines. The same 5 states join NATO. The only difference between timelines is that Oakland exists in one timeline. I meant to say Oakland when I said Sacramento, and it doesn't in the other. And that is going to be it for episode 1. Thank you all so much for watching, and be sure to tune in to episode 2, where things get heated. Next episode, the 2 timelines will be covered as one, and a bunch of states are probably not going to exist.